Welcome to another edition of ALN Thursday at 3. My name is Mike Bordnaro. I'm the Executive Director of the Asset Leadership Network, and I'm very happy to have Chris Silkie here to be talking about Portland, Oregon's Natural Area Conditions Assessment. And it is a phenomenal asset management endeavor that is um, reported on. We'll put up a link shortly. And it's not over, but we'll let Chris explain to us all of the details of that. But we like to thank our sponsors. And we do that usually, but we're not able to this time. So we're just going to say thank you to our patron members, which are CGI, Onuma Inc., Mantech, ABS Quality Evaluations, and testing my memory. But anyway, and all of our members, and say that next week we're having a program on the federal acquisition regulations and how we are working to get asset management inserted into the newest edition. Specifically, we're looking to put in ISO 55001 as a reference. So we'll have some people who are working on that, including Tom Ruckdashel, who was with the DoD, and Rich Culbertson, who is a board member. And that's a very interesting thing, because if we get ISO 55001 into the federal regulation, federal acquisition regulations, that's going to change a whole lot. And actually, we've been working on that for a while. Then we're probably going to be taking August off and coming back in September with the program on what we're going to be dedicating our fall to, which is ensuring the asset information from planning, design, and construction is quickly and accurately transferred for commissioning, operations, and maintenance. You would think that this is a simple thing and that people would be doing it, but in fact, it doesn't happen, and it wastes time and money. And we've been talking about this for a long time, but enough of our members are interested in this endeavor that we're going to be focusing on that in the fall. And actually, that aligns with something that the National Institute of Building Sciences has also dedicated a paper to. So we'll be teaming up with them on that. So, Chris, can you come in and join us? Thanks.
Yeah, hi Mike. Hello. Hello
And
everybody.
it's been great having you as a contributor and participant for so long. And how are you doing? What's going on? It's 95 degrees in Chicago. What's going on
Oof.
in Portland?
It's a beautiful high 70s.
Really?
Summers in Portland are always wonderful. So I don't often go elsewhere in the summertime.
Yeah, yeah. So this natural areas, uh, tell me the title again. It's
Natural area condition assessment.
excellent. Um, and what was what's the background to this?
Yeah, so you know, a lot of the discussions on this network and in the discipline of asset management focus around built assets. And a number of years ago, we had some internal dialogue about half of what we do in Portland Parks and Recreation pertains to natural assets, trees, natural areas, wetlands, and so on. And there was kind of this aha moment where it's like we're not treating our natural resources with the same level of care regarding information and processes and so on as we are built assets. And that's kind of started the ball rolling around the idea of we're reporting all this information about built assets, we're making strategies around them. We need to be doing the same thing with our natural areas and do right by the environment because ultimately it's a public health issue. And so that led to identification of the resource needed to do the work. And it's 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 interesting because a lot of people in asset management, maybe you have analysts, engineers, and so on. Uh, we quickly realized that it's a very unique skill set to be able to like look at plants and be able to identify what kind of plant it is, understand, soil ramifications and things like that. And I clearly am not one of those experts. So I hired one, and who also had a mind for the meta skills you need for asset management.
Good. And there's funding involved, you said. How did you bring the importance of this to the level to get the proper amount of funding? Because we got to give a little background. Portland has a lot of natural areas. It's got the largest park in the country.
Yes, Forest Park, and the the opportunity came with a voter initiative, a parks levy. We knew, again, we're building asset management capacity, and basically, I was fortunate to be able to secure one FTE. One position is not enough to do all this work, so we
Full-time
also
equivalent. Okay.
correct, and so we also um, had some cross training, and there's a couple people on my team who are doing double duty, who are doing both built asset assessments as well as the natural area assessments, and a little bit of money, not a lot, but a little bit of money because a lot of the work is seasonal in nature, and so we can't do it really effectively during our wet season. So a lot of it is focused in the summertime, and we did also surge last year when this pilot project was done with seasonal employees for the course of the summer, and that really helped tremendously. Unfortunately, the funding for the three seasonal employees isn't available this year, but we are continuing at a slower pace, but with the one FTE and supplementing from cross-trained staff.
Excellent. Thank you. That's real important to understand how it's actually being done. Um, Now, can you tell us, is this a good time to go to your presentation?
Yeah, maybe. Um, let's see. We did it a minute ago. Let's make sure I can do it again.
Okay.
Uh, all right. And maybe if
Yes.
if you can
Very good.
confirm you're seeing the right thing.
Yes.
Um, awesome. So, hello. That's a wonderful playground, not too far from my house. And it's there's trees and natural there's actually a natural area in the same park as well. And so should I just jump into a presentation? It's a little bit structured, but I'm also happy to be interrupted with questions, and we can
Oh,
just
anytime I think I need a question, I'll jump one in. If anyone puts a question in the chat, I forgot to say, just go ahead and put the questions
yeah,
in the chat. I'll let you know. You don't have to, you can't see those, so I'll let you know what comes up in the chat.
sounds good. I want to preface this by acknowledging that while I'm supported in my work and in sharing this information, I am here today on my lunch hour as myself, as Chris, not as an official representative of the city of Portland or Portland Parks and Recreation. Um, so if I say anything that's controversial, attribute it to me, not to the city nor to parks. Um, so quickly, I just want to go big picture, and then we're going to dive into some technical details and share the results. And also happy to share a full link to the full report. Context. I gave you the big picture context. I want to share the context for why I want to be here, which is I don't want anyone to have to like redo the methodology development work that we went through. We made the investment, plagiarize our methodology, please, and contact me if you want more details about it, because this is an area where I think more programs, more jurisdictions, and more entities need to be doing it, and we don't all need to recreate the wheel. Um, as I said, I'm mainly here as a spokesperson. I don't do the actual work. These are the wonderful people that do the actual work. The person who's not showing their face is our lead on this. And again, someone who has ecological background is able to look at a plant and identify it. They have those kinds of skill sets. Interestingly, I will share that actually starting this, I did have to work with human resources quite a bit because we have this large classification system, not dissimilar from the federal government, and it's like, well, what classification is this for a position to do this? And we're going in between, and we actually didn't find a perfect fit. We ended up adding some words to an engineering related class specification, and that ended up being the right title to recruit for this kind of work. So it's kind of a new thing. Um, Again, in contrast to the built asset assessments, there's lots of great um, guidance out there already for built asset assessments. There's no standard, but there's lots of great guidance, and there's not tremendous guidance around doing this work for natural assets.
Where did you find any?
Next slide. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
So so there's several aspects to the methodology development, benchmarking. Who else is doing this, even to begin with? Um, what to use for your inventorying and classification of the physical asset. That first core question, traditional question of asset management is, what are my assets? And so how are we describing these different parts of a natural area? And then there's the rating development. So our benchmarking led us locally, it led us internationally, other jurisdictions, New York, uh, Natural Area Conservancy had something going. Our other another part of Portland, the Bureau of Environmental Services, had something. It was far more technical. Um, and these assessments need to be fast. They need to be visual assessments that you can do quickly, especially when you're talking about 6,000 acres. And then Washington Department of Natural Resources actually had a fantastic one. It was for a rural setting in large natural areas. So the unique nature of this is urban natural area. So we reached out, grabbed all the methods out there, refined collaboratively internally, did a field test, and so really try to answer the question, is this telling us what I need to know? How long is it taking? Because that's a key question. Can I scale this to get to 6,000 acres? Um, Completely changed everything actually as a result of that field test, and then refined and deployed the methodology last year. And that's the results that I'm going to share with you in a minute.
Okay, so what was some of that refinement? Let's help people avoid some of the things that you ran into.
Yeah, a big one was the sampling rate. So in a nutshell, you're taking these acreage and you're um, only physically on the ground looking at a very small percentage of that. And you do that in multiple locations. You have this random sample, and that's how you're extrapolating an assessment. And we lowered the sampling rate. We found examples of the number. I want to say it's 0.1%. Actually, it's quite a low percentage sampling rate. We had to go lower because you figure out how long it takes in the field exercise, and then you do the math and multiply it out, and you're like, oh my gosh, we don't have 5 people doing this work. We have, roughly one and a half.
Mhm.
Um, that's one. Another one was originally we were doing on-site tree canopy measurements for how much sunlight is getting through in these natural areas. There's a special um, device you use. I'm going to forget the name to do that. We eliminated that. It took a fair amount of time. It wasn't really answering the core questions that we needed to get answered. Those are just two examples, and there's many others.
Okay, thank you.
Um, oh, so I'm gonna show where we landed, and there's two components. There is on the left, you have this is people in the natural area making observations. And on the right is all GIS based background work that can be done to produce a score. And so we look at on the left, on site, boots on the ground, soil condition, the vegetation, the diversity and prevalence of the type of vegetation, um, whether it's native or nuisance. And I want to just pause for a minute on nuisance vegetation. Previous to this, we had a key performance indicator of how much treatment do we do of invasive species every year, like just in terms of number of acres. Do we have people weed pulling? How much do we actually remove in terms of acreage? And one of the key drivers of this is that that's not really telling you how you're doing. And so, because if we're treating, say, 200 acres a year, but the invasive species are winning, that that that's not enough. And so, without any other way to estimate the prevalence of nuisance and invasive species, um, really all we were measuring was level of effort, not level of performance. And so that's one outcome of this is to really measure level of performance. The structure of the vegetation, woody regeneration, is there evidence of trees and other vegetation propagating and actually starting anew? And then coarse woody debris, so logs that are fell down and are deteriorating, and that's really healthy and that's good for the ecosystem. On the GIS side, um, it's the type of the land itself, which includes the context of this natural area. And I'll show you on the next slide what I mean by that. Uh, the intensity of the development around it, and then along the perimeter of the natural area, how much of that is actually natural versus like paved because it's like, oh, there's a big street that goes through the middle of it. And then just the how big that natural edge is. And so I'll show a picture and that might help a little bit.
And can you talk a little bit about the technology aspect, the GIS? That's what you're doing.
Yeah, I'll try. um, there they were are I'm so fortunate to have some fantastic GIS experts work on the asset management team, and they're able to pull different data layers from like USGS, from our local um, metro. It's a regional government, and they publish some data sets. They take all of our data sets, and they're able to pull this all together and extract this data from it. Don't ask me how they do it, but they do
Yeah.
it. And this is just a graphical example. So you can see you have the gray represents developed area, the green represents natural, the brown is the natural area of interest. And, so if there's a bunch of gray and your natural area is the only thing, it kind of gets at the importance of it. So when you have contiguous natural area, that leads to a higher score. Um, and what I'm showing there in the lower left-hand corner is when you're just looking at those GIS-based metrics or landscape context metrics, this was the breakdown of our results from what we looked at last year. And then I'm gonna
what does fair mean? Can we go over those
Yeah,
numbers and
yeah,
what that means to you?
yeah. Thank you. I glossed over that.
But
So
that's
remember
okay.
early on, I shared this reference for built assets, which has this 1 to 5 scale of very good, good, fair, poor, and very poor. And there's a there's a decent standard around those definitions on built assets. And so we tried to extrapolate that to the natural assets. And the definition was built up for the landscape context score by looking at the results to some degree, but also surveying our internal experts, ecologists, and natural resource managers, and so on. Um, what constitutes healthy, a healthy ecosystem? And a healthy ecosystem is that good or two rating. And then basically it goes, you can have a little bit, you can have like fantastic, and then you have degradations from there. And very poor would mean like, boy, yeah, it's a natural area, but there's a lot of developed area right around it. The edge is actually not very wide where there's a natural area buffer. So you get lots of foot traffic that, bring with them people bring seeds on their shoes from elsewhere. We also get other forms of human impact like trash, litter, and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, so that's the essence of it. But this was really key though, because again, we wanted to be able to show parity with how we're managing our built assets. And we have
Hmm.
a performance metric for our built assets of this is a long-term target, we want half of our assets to be in one or two good or very good condition. And we want the same thing for our natural assets.
And
So
how do you feel about this? You clearly didn't give yourself very good, no very good,
yeah,
but
yeah.
to have almost 70% in fair condition, that's got to make you feel you're in shooting distance.
I, for this one, and so remember, this is half of the metric, and I'll show you. We take the GIS metrics, the on-site metrics, and build up to a final score. So
Okay,
let me show you that one before I answer that question.
very okay.
Um, So that's GIS. Then we have the site work. Again, it's seasonal. We can't do it during the wet season. Safety is, of course, top consideration. Heat stress. Um, there's slopes. Working alone. We don't work alone, actually. um, and uh, critters. Bees. You name
Yeah,
it.
because
Safety has to be number one.
your big forest, you've got predators.
There's been bear sightings up there. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Um, and then they're doing data collection. So they got to hike in with some gear and collect data safely. Safety
are they
first.
measuring? Is that what that is?
Yeah. So I showed this slide because it's they're measuring out a plot area. So this one I think may have been 30 feet um, radius, and that is a sampled plot. So we do random, again using GIS, they randomly will create, okay, here's the sampling that needs to happen. That tells our assessors, okay, you got to go to this spot. Like even if you want to go over there and do the sampling over there, nope, to conform to our randomness requirement. Um, you go to the lat long where we want to take the measurement, create the plot, and then they begin their site work of recording the species present and the soil condition and the woody debris and so on. Um, so remember, we had the GIS results, and now we have the on-site results, kind of similar, bunch landing in the fair, and this is, this is one of the questions, like, is this telling us anything? The answer is yes, and that's coming. Um, we combine those two together to get a final result. And then that's what gets tallied and reported up. But also, while you're doing this, we're not just doing this to result in a number. There are some very valuable outputs. Um, so we have an inventory.
Actually, there's a question before you
Yeah,
get to the outputs. If you go
yeah.
back to the slide, or are you going to go to one where there's a combined?
Yes, that's coming up.
All right, I'll wait. I'll save the question for that one.
So don't read this slide, but just know, so we actually create a species inventory. Um, we can estimate the prevalence of nuisance species, in this case, 34%. Um, and also just is that there? So I personally am not able to identify all these species. And again, this is where the training and getting the right people doing the work come in. You need people who are able to do that to do this kind of work. So here's the consolidated. It kind of looks like what you might expect, adding them, bulk in the fair. That's kind of more than we want in the poor. We need to shift that over, and that's like a 10-year effort to shift that. Probably longer. That's probably a 20-year effort. And our intent is to do this at each site, um, at no less frequency than every 5 years, so that we can start building that trend line. We've done that with some built assets, and we've started creating that trend line on built assets. Um, it takes time, it takes investment, so you need useful information before 20 years. No one's going to wait 20 years for a result, uh, but this is the start of it, and we do have work to do. Like that's what this shows. There's work to do.
So the question is the benchmark that you established of 50% good and very good informing your strategy for creating a strategic asset management plan?
And for the interventions, that the exactly what, yes, and the next step for us is actually resource estimates, um, because one of the strategic values of asset management is not just that specific, like, what do you do where, that's an output, but also how much. Like, are you investing enough, and being able to convincingly answer that question and project. Um, so I'd say that's first before a more specific, like, here's what you do where. It's also the, are are we adequately tending towards our natural assets, and if not, by how much?
Okay, I should have started this program by saying I am so fascinated with this that there's no way that it's going to be done in a half hour. So if people need
Are
to
we at a
leave,
half
we're,
hour?
we're at
Okay,
the
sorry.
bottom of the hour. If they need to leave, I understand, but I appreciate it if you can stick around into overtime because this is really fascinating. I've got a lot of questions.
And Mike, I wonder if you could post my email address in the chat. I'm
I
I'm
have,
happy
and
to.
I'll do it again.
Wonderful. Thank you. So anyone can feel free to contact me if you're not able to stay.
And do you have the link at some point on the
I
slide
think
deck?
I think you linked to it in
I'll put it in the
broadcasting.
chat. I've put it in the newsletter over and over
Great,
again. I'll
great,
I'll dig that up and send that also.
perfect.
So how much
And
more
then,
in the
yeah,
presentation?
just a couple more slides. Yeah,
Okay.
just a couple more slides. So also, because we classified our land cover and we have these ratings, we can actually start looking at trends right now in terms of the type of land cover. So we have condition breakdown based on the type. And so, as you can see, our prairie lands and our shrub lands aren't looking very good. And so this is an example of, this is where we can focus attention. And then this is just that same one, bigger. Last ones are quick hits. Here we go. Um, we also do a dashboard so that people can navigate to specific sites, pick up an individual plot. They can look at the pictures from what were there. They can really dive into the details of what species were present, and what the breakdowns of the scores were that build up to that final score. So this is a dashboard that we make available to anyone. Um, and then I believe you linked to this report. So we decided to invest in spending some time to not just have data, but also have a easier to read report. And here's our plan. The green is what we did this past year. The orange is what's left. What we're able to focus on is just a little bit of orange in the lower left-hand corner, but that big forest park in the left side. We're not tackling that this year. That's going to be a multi-year effort probably. Um, so that's what's next for us. And there's some of our seasonal team and a beautiful meadow. And I'm happy to continue the discussion or take questions.
Looks like a great job if you can get it. So before you leave the slides, can you go back to the one that you said don't read? Because I think that has a lot of the issues. So how do you show that Himalayan blackberry is bad for Portland? How do you show that English ivy taking over all your parks is not good for Portland? And then Cecilia has a question about how do you balance the very poor um, when you want end users to respectfully utilize the natural assets, right? You don't want to keep them off the very poor. That's a tough balancing act. So
Yeah.
I guess that's two questions. And one is, how do you indicate that this is valuable and necessary?
Yeah, great questions. And I'll try to address Cecilia's first about just our philosophy is we don't close off our natural areas. There are land management agencies that do, like the natural area is for the nature and it's not for people. That is not the philosophy or our operational practice in parks and recreation. They are open. People are encouraged to recreate responsibly. Um, and there are impacts that always come with that. Um, to the second question about communicating around the invasive species, there is, well, luckily, I'll say we benefit from many, many external partners who actually do a lot of that advocacy work. Um, the Bird Alliance of Oregon, the Nature Conservancy, the watershed councils. There's a lot of external partners who frankly do just a fantastic job of um, communicating science. And really, what this is communicating science to the public. Um, and we do as well. All of our ecologists and so on are and our um, public communications are involved in that as well. It's interesting the invasives. I was just talking with someone about that this morning. If you only cared about carbon or maybe like water infiltration, you may not care that you have invasive species. But once you start, because it's like, hey, any green matter absorbs carbon and absorbs water. But the minute you start caring about whole ecosystems, including the critters, including the insects, including pollinators, including the soil health, and ultimately including people, you need to start caring about the invasive species because of the clear linkage between biodiversity and resiliency. Um, and not just climate resiliency, but also like fire, like fires and Well, that's really the big one. There is an estimate the that the high prevalence of invasive species is actually harmful and creates a wildfire hazard. And so removing that is actually wise uh, if you live at the urban forest interface. And we do have many properties that are at that interface too. And actually, our fire department has a whole program around that in partnership with parks around fire resiliency. So that's a
Oh,
whole area. So yeah,
okay, you can stop sharing your
yeah,
screen now. And one of the things that you've touched on in the answers here is involving all relevant parties.
yeah.
And you're actively doing that, whether or not you're following ISO 55001, which is just common sense. And it's very good to know that you have those common sense partnership programs going on.
Yeah, many relevant stakeholders. I won't say all. You have to.
Yes.
y- y-
Thank you. Yeah.
we try.
Yeah.
We try, uh, and that's where that revision comes in too, because um, get experts together. You think you're doing the right thing, try it out, and it's like, hey, is this actually telling you what you need? And we need people to say, no, it's not. We actually need to know this, and so that's really important for the process.
There's a whole behavior factor element in that is missing from ISO 55001. You have followed ISO 55001. That's how you got your department to be such a strong leader in asset management. But next revision, I'm going to see if we can get something about human behavior issues in ISO
Mm-hmm.
55001. Consider different human behavior issues. Anyway, um, so you answered some questions, something about the education of your uh, participants,
Mm-hmm.
your users. Is there anything that you do to involve them or make them aware of what's going on with this assessment and the long-term nature of it?
Yes. So I lead the Parks and Recs asset management group and team, and that's the center of this work. We have a significant internal stakeholder whose job it is to actually manage um, these natural areas, and they were involved every step of the way. And I will share with that this is not their assessment, and this is kind of a philosophy overall too that extends to the built environment, that it's not often best practice to actually have those who are actually doing the daily management of an asset to be the ones doing this um, measurement of it. Um, because the measurement itself is a discipline, that skill with GIS and using tools and data and things like that, that's often different than the skill sets involved in, say, maintaining a heating unit. Um, that's one. And so just last week, we did a formal sharing out of the final result, took Q&A, and I actually wasn't there, but I heard it went really well, and there were good questions asked, and it's going to form our methodology. It's going to inform um, what we continue to do and the value that we get from this. That's one. And then a lot of the training that I was referring to earlier was actually um, the actual data collection work for those seasonal employees. So we have the one person who's like became the true expert in this, and you hire seasonals with the right background, but then learning the specific protocol requires training, requires calibration. Cross checks is an important quality control mechanism, so we do cross checks. Um, so yeah, lots of outreach, and just recently, this was shared with our our parks board. So we have an oversight board, just like corporations have a board, shared with them, as well as our levy oversight committee, who, they're the ones who basically paid for it. They're representing the community who paid for the work that created the position, and so we were able to share. Here's the result of your investment, and here's what we're going to do with it.
Excellent. So what are some of the lessons learned, and what would you recommend people to avoid?
Um, the
You can focus on
as
lessons learned. You don't have to
Yeah,
go into the avoid part.
you know, we have extensive collaboration, and it's more of a forewarning than a lessons learned. It's don't underestimate the difference in perspective between the natural resource management community and maybe the asset management slash engineering community. That there are fundamental differences in the disciplines, in um, what what you think should be done, and it is very different to say we're going to take an asset management framework and apply it to natural resources. There are many people who don't think that's appropriate. It's just, hey, you should never do that. Um, so forewarning, be ready for those conversations. And um, and then I guess on the technical side, a lesson learned is this is kind of my philosophy with a lot of these assessment programs. There's different perspectives out there, but if you're not going to do something with that little nugget of data that you want to collect, don't collect it. There's no um, time or resources to manage it on an ongoing basis. So the most resource intense aspect of this effort is the boots on the ground data collection. And so if you have to collect 10 things instead of 5 things, then you multiply that out by, in our case, 6,000 acres. Um, that might increase your cycle time, from 5 years, which is reasonable. It's kind of the outer edge of where it's valuable, to 7 years, and and that's not good. Or it increases the resources required from, say, 2 positions to 8, to 3 or 4 positions, and your organization isn't willing to make that investment. So the minimum necessary to answer the business questions you have is,
That's great, Chris. I think that's a wonderful point to end on, unless you had any other thing that you wanted to share.
I would just reiterate, please, consultants, other jurisdictions, anyone, uh, plagiarize. There's more details to the methodology, and I'm happy to share it.
I put the link to the direct PDF in the chat there, and I am putting your email in the chat one more time. And just thank you so much, for spending time with us. Clearly, you are very busy. We appreciate the work that you're doing there and sharing it and encouraging others to learn from you. So you're really doing the network, the work of the network, and we appreciate those efforts. And
Yeah, thank you so much. I actually took a note. I'm looking forward to the discussion in the fall about asset handover too, because when I heard you say that, I was like, oh, that's another pain point. Like, so I'm definitely going to tune in for that too.
even in Parks and Recreation.
Of course. Yeah.
Of course. Okay, well, we'll talk about that offline and get
Yeah.
you involved. Denver International Airport said that they're interested in it, and they have aspects for that too. And thank you for that. And then
Yeah.
next week, we're talking about federal acquisition uh, regulations and how we can insert ISO 55001 in that. And like I said, we're going to take vacation in August and come back strong on that issue that obviously is already drawing interest. So thanks for that
Awesome.
feedback, immediate feedback, Chris. You're great.
All right. Thanks
And
again.
thanks to all
And
the
thanks
audience.
everybody. Yeah.
Bye for now.
Cecilia, good to hear from you. Take care. Bye.